I want to introduce a new word into your vocabulary. The word is Gongo. What is Gongo? Gongo is an acronym. It stands for Government-Operated Non-Government Organizations. I was familiar with the concept behind the word Gongo, but I'd never heard anybody say it before until I heard it from Mike Benz. He's the only person that I've ever heard say it.
Or you take the human rights path through a UN job or through a Gongo.
But you need to follow Mike on X, and you need to follow him on his website at Foundation for Freedom Online. But what is Gongo? Gongo is elements of our government, unelected, that need to accomplish things that they can't do legally and that they don't want to get blamed for. So they use NGOs that often hide behind fancy names like think tank, institute, foundation, and there's a whole network of these. But they use these NGOs to accomplish, again, what they can't do legally and what they want. They want to be able to stand back and make it appear as though the government had nothing to do with it, when in fact these government-operated NGOs are doing exactly what the Gongo crowd wanted them to do. Now, how does this work? Well, there's a lot of applications. Everything from everyday propaganda to the border invasion, election security, and yes, the overthrow of governments. But here's a good example. Let's go back to the summer of 2020. Elements of the shadow government, the unelected government, wanted to make sure that everyday citizens like you and me absolutely would not question, would not be skeptical of the upcoming elections that featured things like mail-in ballots by the hundreds of thousands in every state, laws that had been changed without the state legislatures by secretaries of state. They wanted to put in place so that could not be criticized, and to set a precedent that there's no way that you could criticize the results of an election after it had taken place. This is a clip from a Zoom call hosted by the Atlantic Council in 2020 discussing this very thing.
There was a lack of capability around election disinformation. This is not because CISA didn't care about disinformation, but at the time they lacked both kind of the funding and the legal authorizations to go do the kinds of work that would be necessary to truly understand how election disinformation was operating. So because of the feedback and the ideas from this group, we were able to pull together pretty quickly a project between these four different institutions to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves. CISA lacked the legal authorizations, so we were able to pull together a project to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves.
So understand what he just said right there.
Okay, the gentleman at the end there in the corner, that's Mike Benz. You need to follow him on X. You need to find his website. He is the guy on this subject. I'm not trying to be exhaustive. I want to introduce this word Gongo to you. I just want to unlock the door, crack it open a little bit, and invite you to go inside and investigate it, because this is a huge, huge subject, and it's affecting all of us. But the guy speaking on the Zoom call, his name was Alec, I believe, but his last name is Stamos. So he's a supposed intellectual. He's not an intellectual, but he works for Stanford University. But this was hosted by the Atlantic Council. Now, I looked up the Atlantic Council on influencewatch.org, and I'm just going to read the very first thing that comes up when you look up for the Atlantic Council. The Atlantic Council is a think tank. Ooh, they're thinking in their tank. Based in Washington, D.C., that focuses on North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. So think about this. Everything that they do regarding election security, they do the same thing when it comes to anything regarding NATO. Can anybody say Ukraine? The Atlantic Alliance and International Affairs. They're spread across 14 centers worldwide. They focus on a variety of policy issues, including climate change. So the same thing that they will do about election security, squash dissent, they'll do about climate change economic development. We need those illegal migrants in here. We need those invaders because we need cheap jobs. And advocacy of democracy. Now just think about this right now. You just heard this guy talk about how they're working together, putting these networks together of ways to censor dissent.
Our goal with that is that if we're able to find disinformation, that we'll be able to report it quickly and then collaborate with them on taking it down.
And skepticism about elections, and that's all done in the name of advocacy for democracy. But here's the real pay dirt on that I wanted to get to. The Atlantic Council is annually funded by U.S. taxpayers through regular donations routed through several departments and agencies of the federal government, in particular the Department of State. So you just heard Mr. Stamos said they lacked the legal authority to do what they wanted to do. So what did they do? Take money from the federal government, that's your money, that's my money, that's the American taxpayers' money, and they fund, it's not just the Atlantic Council, there's hundreds of these, but they take your tax dollars, my tax dollars, they pump them in to these NGOs, and the government tells them what to do. So there you have it. That's Gongo. Start looking for that. Government operated non-government organizations. The government paying nonprofits, NGOs to do what they A, can't legally do, B, don't want to be seen doing, and apply that to the border invasion, the upcoming election, climate change, you name it, the COVID narrative of the past and the next pandemic that's coming along. I'm going to close by asking you this. Why are we letting our U.S. tax dollars be used in this matter? We got to get on top of this Gongo thing, because until this is eliminated, nothing's really going to change. Please like, please share, please subscribe. See you next time.
I hear the sweet sound of freedom, and I won't be